At 25, I was rarely alone, but I was often lonely. I had people, group chats, plans, a rotation of conversations and shared dinners, and someone to text when I was spiraling. But when the noise faded, when I sat with myself long enough to hear my own voice, I realized something terrifying. I didn't know who I was without the mirror of someone else. I shaped myself around what others needed, around what was attractive, around who would stay. And so I clung to people, not because I was weak, but because I was unrooted. I hadn't learned how to be alone without feeling like I was missing something. I hadn't learned how to enjoy my own company. I hadn't learned that solitude and loneliness are not the same thing. One is empty, the other is full. If I could go back to 25, I wouldn't rush into the next relationship. I wouldn't text just to feel needed. I wouldn't fear the quiet nights. I would sit still, breathe deeper, ask myself harder questions, light a candle and learn the sound of my own breath. And I would fall, slowly, awkwardly, fully in love with solitude. Because being alone isn't the absence of connection. It's the birthplace of it. At 25, I didn't say it out loud, but deep down, I believed it. If someone wanted me, it meant I was worthy. If they didn't, it meant I wasn't. Simple as that. I measured my value by who texted first, who flirted back, who called me pretty, who stayed. I thought attention meant validation, affection meant significance, desire meant I mattered. So I became whatever they needed. Cool, easygoing, chill with plans, chill with not having plans, smiling even when I wanted more, laughing even when I felt small, because if I was chosen, it meant I was enough. And if I wasn't, I spiraled. What did I do wrong? What's wrong with me? Should I have said less, been more? Am I too much, not enough, replaceable? I gave people the power to decide how I felt about myself. I made their presence the proof of my worth. I thought if they stay, I matter. If they leave, I disappear. And no one told me, or maybe I wasn't ready to hear, that letting someone else define your value is the fastest way to forget your own. Because the truth is, when you don't know who you are without someone else, you'll accept almost anyone, even if they don't treat you well. And I did. I stayed in almosts, in situationships, in text threads that felt like connections, but were really just distractions, in rooms where I had to shrink just to fit. And each time someone drifted or ghosted or gave less, I took it personally, not just emotionally, existentially. I didn't just feel rejected, I felt erased. But now I know that being chosen by someone else should never be the foundation of your self-worth. Being chosen by yourself is. You can't outsource the belief that you matter. You have to claim it. You have to learn it in the quiet. In the days when no one texts back. In the nights when you light a candle and sit with your loneliness like it's a friend you're learning to understand. Because here's the wild truth. The more I built a home in myself, the less I needed someone else to rescue me from it. And suddenly, being alone wasn't punishment. It was clarity. I didn't want to be chosen because I made someone laugh, or because I said all the right things, or because I filled their void. I wanted to be chosen because I was whole on my own, and so were they. If I could go back to 25, I'd hold my own hand before reaching for someone else's. I'd take myself out to coffee. I'd write down all the things I love about myself that no one clapped for. I'd stop asking the question, why didn't they pick me? And I'd start asking, why did I forget I already belonged to myself? Because when you remember who you are, being chosen becomes a gift, not a lifeline. And that changes everything. I used to think loneliness only happened when you were physically alone. An empty apartment, a quiet Friday night, no one to text, no plans to dress up for. But at 25, I learned the loneliest place is often right beside people who don't really see you. And I mean really see you. Not the version you perform, not the version they want, but the raw, honest, sometimes contradictory self you barely let out. I had friends. I had laughter and late-night drives. I had people to call and people who called me. But still, when the lights were low and the crowd thinned out, I felt it. That ache, that emptiness, that quiet pull that whispered, "You're still alone in this." And I couldn't figure out why. I was surrounded by people, liked, loved even, but somehow I still felt like I was standing in a room full of mirrors, reflecting who I thought I was supposed to be, but never actually being. That's when I realized loneliness isn't about who's around you. It's about whether you're with yourself. And I wasn't. I was always running, scrolling, filling time, jumping from one connection to the next, sitting across from people I couldn't open up to or wouldn't, terrified of what they'd think if they saw the parts of me I still hadn't made peace with. So I kept the conversation light, kept the stories polished, kept the laughter loud enough to cover the silence that scared me. But the loneliness never left, because I had never truly arrived. I hadn't built a relationship with myself strong enough to hold me when no one else did. I relied on other people to distract me from the inner emptiness. But distraction isn't connection, and no amount of attention, affection, or affirmation can substitute for the security that comes from knowing yourself and staying anyway. I had to learn that the most painful kind of loneliness is being a stranger to yourself. And the only way out was through. I had to sit with the silence. I had to stop numbing every quiet evening with noise. I had to resist the urge to send one more "what are you doing" text just to feel tethered to someone. And that work, that stillness, it saved me. It was in those moments, without a hand to hold, without a voice on the other end, that I started hearing mine. The one that didn't speak in fear. The one that didn't need to be liked. The one that said, "I miss you. I want you to come back to me." Me, talking to me. Loneliness didn't vanish overnight, but I learned to stop fearing it, to stop shaming it, to stop seeing it as proof something was broken. Sometimes loneliness is just your soul's way of saying, "Come home." To you. If I could go back to 25, I'd stop running from the quiet. I'd stop trying to solve loneliness with proximity. And I'd start building the kind of solitude that doesn't feel like lack, but like space to become. Because being alone isn't what hurts. Being disconnected from yourself does. And once I reconnected, the loneliness stopped following me because I wasn't trying to escape myself anymore. I was walking beside me. At 25, I thought love was electricity, the spark, the rush, the ache of missing someone you barely knew, the butterflies when they texted first, the thrill of being chosen, wanted, desired. I thought love was intensity, the all-night conversations, the dramatic arguments, the passion that burned so bright it left nothing behind but ashes. I thought love was longing, for someone to make me feel whole, to finally quiet the parts of me that always felt too loud, too insecure, too unfinished. And when I didn't feel those things, I assumed something was missing. I thought, it must not be love, because I'd confused instability with excitement. I mistook emotional roller coasters for depth. I believed the ones who left and came back were meant for me, because love, I was told, always finds its way. But what I really loved was the idea of being rescued, of someone seeing my mess and staying anyway, of someone soothing the ache I couldn't name, of someone giving me what I hadn't yet learned to give myself. That wasn't love, that was hunger. A hunger for safety, for belonging, for someone to hold the parts I hadn't dared to meet alone. But here's the truth I didn't know back then. Love is not intensity. It's consistency. It's not always butterflies. It's boundaries. It's not longing. It's security. It's not drama. It's peace. I used to chase the highs because I thought that's what love was supposed to feel like. But those highs came with equal lows, and I mistook that chaos for chemistry. The first time I experienced healthy love, I almost walked away because it felt quiet, steady, almost boring. They didn't make grand gestures. They didn't blow up my phone. They didn't say all the right things. But they showed up every day, without games, without second guessing, without asking me to shrink to be loved. And slowly I realized that was love. The kind that doesn't need to prove itself. The kind that doesn't make you guess. The kind that lets you exhale, finally. And the only reason I was able to receive it was because I'd stopped looking for someone to complete me. I had started completing myself. I didn't need saving anymore. I didn't need fireworks to feel alive. I didn't need emotional chaos to feel desired. I just needed someone who met me where I was and stayed. If I could go back to 25, I'd tell her, love isn't meant to rescue you. It's meant to meet you where you already belong to yourself. You don't need someone to fix your loneliness. You need someone to honor your solitude. And that only happens after you've fallen in love with being alone. I remember the first time I took myself out on a date, not out of necessity, not because my plans fell through or no one was free, but because I chose to. That night felt strange. like trying on a dress that didn't quite fit yet. A little awkward, a little bold, a little too honest. I put on lipstick anyway, sprayed perfume like I was meeting someone who mattered. And in a way, I was. I picked a restaurant I'd always wanted to try but thought was too nice to go to alone. A place with dim lighting, jazz in the background, linen napkins, the kind of place I used to reserve for special moments that revolved around someone else. But that night, it revolved around me. And at first, it was uncomfortable. The hostess gave a polite but curious look when I said, "Just one." The server asked, "Are you waiting for someone?" And I smiled, "Nope, it's just me tonight." I sat down, placed my phone face down, took a deep breath, and for the first time in a long time, I was with myself. Not killing time, not scrolling, not half present. I was fully there, in my own company, and it was quieter than I expected. Not just around me, but within me. No pressure to impress. No need to fill the space with small talk or laughter or curated charm. Just me, learning how to enjoy my own presence. I studied the menu like it was a love letter, sipped wine slowly, let my thoughts rise and fall like waves. And something happened halfway through the meal. I stopped feeling like I was missing someone, and started realizing maybe I was the one I'd been missing all along. Because up until that point, I had waited. Waited for someone else to make things special. Waited to be taken somewhere new. Waited to be chosen, planned for, treated. But that night taught me this. You don't have to wait to be loved. You can choose to love yourself, right now. Deliberately, boldly, out loud. That dinner wasn't just a meal. It was a mirror. It showed me where I still felt undeserving, where I still felt like I had to earn joy, romance, softness. It showed me how often I postponed my own life, waiting for it to look like a movie scene starring someone else beside me. But solitude, I realized, can be cinematic too. And when you stop making your life a waiting room for love, you start creating a relationship with yourself that is rich, full, alive. Not in a treat yourself kind of way, but in a show up for yourself kind of way. The kind where you no longer need someone else to make the moment beautiful. Because you do. If I could go back to 25, I'd tell her, don't wait for someone to show you how good life can be. Show yourself. Be the love story you were taught to chase. Buy the flowers, take the trip, wear the dress, book the dinner, light the candles, even if no one else is coming over. Because when you date yourself with care, with reverence, with presence, you stop settling for people who only bring half of that. And that's when love, real love, starts to find you. Not because you're incomplete, but because you've already become home to yourself. There's a moment, a very specific moment, when being alone and being lonely stop meaning the same thing. At 25, I didn't know that yet. I thought they were twins, both unwanted, both uncomfortable, both reminders that I wasn't where I was supposed to be, in love, surrounded, constantly validated. So I avoided being alone. I filled every hour, scrolled past the silence, made sure there was always someone, somewhere, ready to keep me company, even if they didn't really know me. But here's what I didn't realize back then. Loneliness is the absence of connection. Being alone is the presence of self. One aches, the other anchors. Loneliness is when you feel disconnected from others, from meaning from yourself. It doesn't care if you're in a crowded room or on a FaceTime call. It shows up when you feel unseen, unheard, unheld. Aloneness, though? That's different. Being alone is choosing your own company and knowing it's enough. It's not about isolation. It's about intimacy with yourself. And that shift didn't happen all at once. It started slowly, in small, tender moments. Like when I went for a walk without headphones and let the sound of my own breath keep me company. Like when I cooked dinner for one and plated it beautifully. Not to post, not to impress, but because I was worth the effort. Like when I spent a Friday night journaling with wine and candles, not missing anyone, not waiting for something better to arrive, just being in it, fully. That's when I learned something else. Loneliness often comes when you abandon yourself. Aloneness becomes sacred when you return. When you stop seeing solitude as something to escape and start seeing it as something to enter. Because there's wisdom there, there's presence there. There's the kind of peace that doesn't beg for permission or applause. At 25, I used to think I had to earn rest, earn stillness, earn space. That being busy made me important. That being surrounded made me loved. But sometimes the truest kind of love is giving yourself what the world has trained you to outsource: attention, affection, time, care. Aloneness is where you stop asking for someone else to fill your cup and start realizing it's your own hands that were meant to hold it. If I could go back to 25, I'd whisper this into the silence I was so afraid of. Loneliness is not your enemy. It's a signal. Not that you're unloved, but that you've been away from yourself for too long. And the cure? It's not another distraction. It's not more noise. It's not forcing people to stay just to fill the empty space. It's presence. It's stillness. It's choosing to walk into the quiet and stay. Not because you're avoiding others, but because you're finally willing to meet the most important person in your life: you. At 25, I used to say sorry for everything. For not texting back fast enough, for needing a night to myself, for not wanting to go out again, for pulling back when I felt overstimulated, overwhelmed, over it. I felt guilty every time I needed space, like I was disappointing someone, letting them down, failing some unspoken rule that said if you care about people, you'll always be available to them. But the truth is, I wasn't apologizing for my actions. I was apologizing for my boundaries. And I hadn't yet learned that boundaries don't mean you love people less. They mean you finally started loving yourself more. I used to pride myself on being low maintenance, easy to reach, easy to be around, easy to say yes. But what I was really being, unavailable to myself. Because constantly showing up for everyone else without pausing to ask what I needed wasn't kindness. It was self-abandonment. And I didn't know it until one night after 3 weeks of back-to-back plans, calls, favors, check-ins. I sat on my bed and realized I didn't even know how I felt anymore. I'd been so tuned into everyone else, I had turned myself off. That's when I understood. Needing space isn't selfish. It's sacred. It's where you come back to your center. It's where your thoughts stop echoing other people's. It's where your body can finally exhale and your mind can whisper, "There you are." I stopped apologizing after that, not rudely, not defensively, but gently, clearly, lovingly. I can't tonight. I need time to reset. I'd love to talk soon, but I need some space right now. I'm not in a place to hold this conversation today. Can we revisit it another time? The first few times I felt selfish, even scared. What if they take it personally? What if they think I'm pulling away? What if they leave? But you know what happened? The people who loved me for real stayed. They didn't guilt me. They didn't make my space feel like a punishment. They understood. Because they knew. People who respect their own energy will always respect yours too. And the ones who couldn't handle it, maybe they weren't really holding me at all, just their expectation of me. Here's what I know now. Space doesn't weaken connection. It protects it. When I take time to reconnect with myself, I show up better for others. Not drained, not resentful, not halfway there, but whole, present, fully offered. If I could go back to 25, I'd tell her, stop apologizing for needing room to breathe. You're not a machine. You're a human. And even love needs oxygen. The more you respect your need for solitude, the more you attract relationships that don't just tolerate your boundaries, but honor them. And that's not selfish. That's freedom. I didn't fall in love with solitude all at once. At first, it was awkward, unnatural, like showing up to dinner and realizing you were the only one who forgot it was a formal event, out of place, underdressed, unsure. Solitude felt like a punishment I hadn't earned, like being left out of something better, like silence that echoed all the things I didn't want to feel. But something kept pulling me toward it. Tiny moments, soft invitations. That breath of stillness when I said no to plans and the world didn't fall apart. That's where it started. Choosing one quiet night over the usual distractions, going on walks without texting anyone, sitting at the coffee shop with a book, not needing to be seen, just willing to be. And the more I gave solitude a seat at my table, the more it stopped feeling like emptiness and started feeling like intimacy, not the kind you get from someone else. The kind that comes from sitting with your own thoughts long enough that they stop sounding like noise and start sounding like truth. I began hearing things I'd missed for years. You're tired. You don't need to chase that. You're safe now. You're allowed to want more. This version of you is worth knowing. Solitude became the place where I returned to myself. Without mirrors, without expectations, without the pressure to perform. And here's the wildest part. The more I fell in love with being alone, the less lonely I felt. Because solitude isn't about being separate. It's about being whole. It's not isolation. It's integration. It's the moment when you realize, I don't need someone else to reflect my worth back to me. I can see it myself. I started showing up to my life differently. I stopped saying yes out of guilt, stopped filling time out of fear, stopped begging the universe to send someone to complete me, because I was no longer waiting to be rescued from my own life. I was living it, intentionally, presently, unapologetically. And something unexpected happened. My relationships got better, not just romantically. All of them. I stopped demanding things from people they were never meant to give me. I stopped testing their love by seeing if they could survive my absence of self. I stopped clinging. Instead, I met them as someone who already felt home in her own skin. And that shifted everything. I didn't need people to fill my silence. I wanted people who could share it. I didn't fear being alone between texts or dates or plans. I looked forward to those gaps because they were mine. And when love came again, as it always does, I wasn't afraid of losing myself in it, because I had found myself first. If I could go back to 25, I'd take her hand and say, don't fear the quiet. Don't rush to fill the space. There's a version of you waiting in the stillness, and she's not missing anything. She is everything. Falling in love with solitude didn't mean I stopped needing people. It meant I stopped needing them to rescue me from myself. And that changed everything. At 25, I didn't feel safe. Not really. Not because I was in danger, not because anything obvious was wrong, but because I didn't trust myself to hold me. When I was hurt, I didn't know how to soothe myself. When I was overwhelmed, I reached for distractions instead of rest. When I felt afraid, I looked outward for comfort, for validation, for permission to fall apart. My emotional safety was outsourced. If someone loved me, I felt steady. If someone pulled away, I unraveled. I didn't know how to stay standing when everything inside me was shaking. So I did what a lot of us do. I tried to become someone no one would leave. Perfect, easy, low maintenance, smiling even when I was crumbling on the inside. But there's nothing more unsafe than abandoning yourself in order to keep others close. And I didn't realize how much I was doing that until I found myself alone during a hard season. No relationship to lean on, no person to text at midnight, no audience to applaud my strength, just me, raw, exposed, unfiltered. And for a moment, I panicked. The feelings came in waves. Fear, sadness, grief I hadn't named in years. There was no one to soothe them, no one to say, you're okay, I've got you. Until I did. I put my hand on my chest and whispered, I'm here. I've got you. And something shifted. I cried, not because I was breaking, but because I was finally safe enough to feel it all. That moment was the beginning of something sacred, becoming my own safe place. Not perfect, not always graceful, but steady. I learned to be the one who didn't abandon myself. Not when I was anxious, not when I was angry, not when I was ashamed. I learned to check in, to pause before the spiral, to hold space for the feelings that used to scare me into silence. And over time, I realized self-safety isn't about always being calm. It's about knowing you'll stay. Even when the storm hits, I stopped gaslighting my own pain, stopped minimizing what hurt just to appear resilient, stopped using humor to deflect what needed to be held. Instead, I started asking, what do you need right now? What's hurting underneath this reaction? What would it look like to stay soft even here? And then, slowly, clumsily, I began giving that to myself. A walk, a cry, a boundary, a deep breath, a night alone, a morning without my phone, a reminder that my emotions weren't problems to fix. They were signals to honor. And here's what I discovered. When you become your own safe place, the world doesn't feel as threatening because you know you can return to yourself, no matter what. If someone rejects you, you're still held. If plans fall through, you're still grounded. If everything shifts, you still have you, not just surviving, but staying. If I could go back to 25, I'd look her in the eyes and say, they don't have to stay for you to be safe. You're allowed to be your own anchor. You're allowed to be the arms you run into. And when you are, you stop performing. You start belonging. Because safety isn't just about who holds you. It's about learning how to hold yourself with kindness, with grace, and with the kind of quiet loyalty that says, no matter what happens, I won't leave me. I used to think love was something you found, out there, in someone, in their eyes, their voice, their approval. I thought the better I became at being loved, being sweet, soft, understanding, attractive, the better I'd be at loving. But I never learned how to love someone from a place of fullness because I didn't know how to be full on my own. At 25, my love was hungry. Not reckless, not manipulative, just incomplete. I poured myself out, hoping someone would pour back in. I gave, hoping it would earn me staying power. I shaped myself around what others needed because I thought love meant adapting. And when the relationship cracked, when silence fell or affection faded, I crumbled because I wasn't just losing them. I was losing the version of me that only felt alive in their presence. But being alone taught me something I never learned in love. You cannot offer peace to someone when you are at war with yourself. Being alone forced me to sit with the parts of me I used to outsource, my identity, my worth, my calm. It made me ask deeper questions. What do I actually want outside of who I'm trying to impress? What am I giving just to feel needed? Do I even like who I become in love, or just the idea of being chosen? And as I got clearer, I got quieter, more intentional, more honest. I stopped chasing people who needed convincing, stopped romanticizing tension, stopped confusing being wanted with being respected. I started loving myself in ways I used to beg from others. I spoke kindly to myself, gave myself room to feel without shame, touched my own body like it was something sacred, not something to be approved. And in that stillness, I realized something profound. Being alone doesn't make you less capable of loving someone. It makes you more responsible with the love you give. You stop offering it to fix people, to save people, to get something back. You stop loving out of fear and start loving out of overflow. Because when you no longer fear losing someone, you don't grip so tightly. You don't shrink. You don't bend just to stay wanted. You stay whole. That's the kind of love I started showing up with. Not the performative kind, not the transactional kind, but the real kind. The kind that says, I'm not here to complete you. I'm here to meet you, fully, as I am. No mask, no audition, no need to prove I'm enough. And when I did meet someone new, from that place of solitude-earned clarity, I didn't need them to rescue me. I didn't need them to guess what I felt. I didn't need their love to be oxygen, because I had already learned how to breathe on my own. If I could go back to 25, I'd tell her this. Love doesn't start when someone enters your life. It starts when you stop abandoning yourself for connection. Being alone didn't make me a better lover because I learned how to be more romantic, more charming, more seductive. It made me better because I became softer with myself. And from that softness, I could love without losing myself in the process. And when two people who've done that work meet, they don't just fall in love. They rise in it, together. If you're 25 right now, you might feel like the world is asking you for answers you don't have yet. You're expected to know who you are, to know what you want, to chase it relentlessly, to hustle, to post, to glow up, to prove you're not falling behind. And all the while, some small voice inside you might be whispering, is it okay to just be? Am I allowed to not know? Can I step off the stage, even for a little while? Here's the truth that no one told me at 25. You don't need to have it all figured out to be worthy of peace. You don't need a timeline to be proud of your pace. And you absolutely don't need to be in a relationship to feel whole. You've been conditioned to believe that your value is measured in proximity, to someone, to something, to success, to stability, to perfection. But the bravest thing you can do right now is to stop running toward what everyone else says you should want and start listening to what your soul is quietly asking for. Because if you listen closely, beneath the pressure, beneath the comparison, beneath the endless scroll, you'll hear something sacred. Your own voice. And maybe that voice doesn't have a 5-year plan. Maybe it doesn't want to go out tonight. Maybe it doesn't want to keep dating people who drain you, chasing goals that don't fit, proving your worth to people who weren't even watching. That voice might be begging you to pause, to breathe, to spend time with yourself in a way that isn't transactional. Because you are not a project to be completed. You are a person to be known. And if you're 25 right now, feeling lost or late or unsure or behind, please hear this. You are not behind. You are becoming. You are becoming someone who knows how to sit in their own company and enjoy the stillness. Someone who stops apologizing for needing rest, for craving solitude, for not showing up every moment with a curated smile. You are becoming someone who no longer mistakes loneliness for lack, but understands it as an invitation to slow down, to soften, to go inward instead of outward, to ask better questions, to fall in love with who you are when no one else is in the room. Because the life you want, the real one, not the Instagram filtered dream, won't come from finding someone to complete you. It will come from coming home to yourself, over and over again. So light the candle, pour the wine, book the dinner for one, write the journal entry you've been avoiding, take the walk with no destination. Let the quiet linger longer than feels comfortable. This is not a waiting room. This is the main event. You are not in between chapters. You're in the middle of the most important one. The one where you stop searching for your worth in someone else's eyes and start seeing yourself clearly for the first time. And when you do, everything changes. Not because the world gets easier, not because love suddenly knocks on your door, but because you finally stop begging life to make you feel whole and realize you already are. If you're 25 right now, you have time. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to want more. You are allowed to let go. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to be alone and not be lonely. Fall in love with your own company. Learn how to hold yourself. Learn how to ask yourself what you need and actually listen. You won't always feel this unsure. You won't always carry this ache. But what you build in this solitude, it will hold you for the rest of your life. Because real love, the kind you're craving, starts when you stop chasing it and start becoming it. For yourself. First.